physicists discovered something impossible. Your thoughts don't just interpret reality, they collapse it into existence. When you observe something, you don't see what was already there. You force it to choose what to be. Reality doesn't exist until you think about it. This isn't philosophy. This is measured, repeatable, verified quantum mechanics. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why every physicist who touches this walks away disturbed. If you want more content that shows you how reality actually works, not how we pretend it works, make sure you're subscribed. I post videos like this weekly. Now let's collapse some possibilities. Here's what we believe about reality. Objects exist independently of whether anyone observes them. The moon is there whether you look at it or not. A tree falling in the forest makes a sound even if no one hears it. Your coffee cup sits on the table regardless of your attention. This seems obvious. It's how reality appears to work at human scale. We build our entire understanding of existence on this assumption. Matter is matter. It exists. It has properties. It occupies space. Consciousness just witnesses what's already there. Except quantum mechanics reveals this is completely, demonstrably, impossibly wrong. Not as interpretation, not as philosophy, as measured experimental fact. When physicists observe quantum particles, those particles behave fundamentally differently than when they're not observed. Not a little different, not statistically different, categorically, impossibly different, as if observation itself forces reality to choose what to be. This creates an unbearable question. If observation changes the observed at the quantum level, and everything is made of quantum particles, what does this mean for the reality you experience right now? Are you observing a world that exists independently? Or are you collapsing possibilities into actuality through the very act of thinking about them? Over the next 25 minutes, we're going to explore the experimental evidence that forces this question. We'll examine the double-slit experiment that first revealed observation changes physical behavior. We'll look at Wheeler's delayed choice experiment that suggests causality can work backwards. We'll explore what happens when conscious intention is directed at quantum systems. And then we'll bridge from laboratory evidence to lived experience, from quantum strangeness to the consciousness experiencing this right now. By the end, you won't just understand that thoughts collapse reality. You'll recognize that you've been doing it your entire life without knowing. You'll see why physicists call this the measurement problem and why it remains unsolved after a century. Because solving it requires answering a question physics has no tools for. What is consciousness? And why does it have the power to collapse possibility into actuality? Let's find out what reality actually is. The double-slit experiment is the foundation of quantum strangeness. It's been called the only mystery in quantum mechanics, because if you understand this one experiment, you understand why reality isn't what it seems. Here's what happens. You fire individual electrons at a barrier with two slits. Behind the barrier, you place a detection screen that records where each electron hits. Common sense says each electron goes through one slit or the other, like bullets through a fence, and you should see two bands on the screen corresponding to the two slits. That's not what happens. Instead, you see an interference pattern. Multiple bands, light and dark stripes. This pattern only appears when waves overlap with themselves, when one wave goes through both slits simultaneously and interferes with itself on the other side. But you fired individual electrons, one at a time. Each electron somehow goes through both slits, interferes with itself, and creates a wave pattern. This is already impossible by classical physics. A particle can't be in two places simultaneously. But here's where it gets disturbing. The moment you place a detector at the slits to observe which slit each electron passes through, the interference pattern vanishes. Completely. Instantly. Now you get two bands, as if each electron chose one slit and behaved like a particle. The act of measurement, of observation, fundamentally changes what the electron is doing. Not just what you know about it, what it actually, physically does. When unobserved, it behaves as a wave and goes through both slits. When observed, it behaves as a particle and goes through one. Your observation collapses the wave of possibility into a single actuality. This isn't speculation. This experiment has been replicated thousands of times since the 1920s. With electrons, photons, atoms, even molecules containing over 2,000 atoms. Same result every time. Observation changes physical behavior at the most fundamental level. Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, said it clearly. It is wrong to think that the task of physics is to find out how nature is. Physics concerns what we can say about nature, because what nature is depends on whether you're looking. Now, let's go deeper. The delayed choice experiment, proposed by physicist John Wheeler and successfully performed multiple times since, pushes this strangeness into territory that seems to violate causality itself. Here's the setup. You send a photon toward a beam splitter, a device that splits light so the photon can take two possible paths. At the end of each path, you can place either a detector that measures which path the photon took, or you can combine the paths back together with another beam splitter and look for interference, which would indicate the photon took both paths simultaneously. Wheeler asked a disturbing question. What if you decide whether to measure which path or to look for interference only after the photon has already passed the first beam splitter, after it should have already committed to being either a particle on one path or a wave on both paths? According to classical logic, this shouldn't matter. The photon's behavior should be determined by what it did in the past, not by what you choose to measure in the future. But that's not what happens. When you choose to measure which path after the photon has passed the beam splitter, it behaves as if it took only one path, like a particle. When you choose to look for interference after it's passed, it behaves as if it took both paths, like a wave. Your future choice of measurement determines the photon's past behavior. The experiment has been performed with photons traveling billions of miles, with the decision of how to measure made after the photon should have committed to its nature. Same result. The future observation determines the past state. This suggests something impossible, that reality isn't sitting there fully formed waiting to be discovered, that the past itself exists in a state of possibility until consciousness collapses it through observation. Wheeler called this a participatory universe. He said, "We are participators in bringing into being not only the near and here, but the far away and long ago. Not witnesses, participators." And then there's the work that makes physicists most uncomfortable. Studies examining whether conscious intention, not just measurement equipment, affects quantum systems. Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has conducted rigorous experiments where human subjects focus conscious intention on quantum random number generators. These devices use quantum tunneling to produce truly random output, 50-50 probability for 0 or 1, governed entirely by quantum uncertainty. The subjects are asked to mentally influence the output toward more ones or more zeros. The results, published in peer-reviewed physics journals, show a small but statistically significant deviation from randomness in the intended direction. Not huge, not mind control, but measurable, repeatable, and beyond chance. When conscious intention is directed at quantum systems, those systems deviate from pure randomness. The effect is tiny at the scale of individual measurements, but becomes undeniable across thousands of trials. What this suggests is genuinely disturbing. That consciousness doesn't just collapse quantum states through mechanical measurement. That intention itself, focused awareness, has a measurable effect on quantum probability. The physicist John von Neumann traced the chain of measurement back to its logical conclusion. The measuring device is made of quantum particles. So what collapses the measuring device's quantum state? Another measuring device. And what collapses that? You can't have an infinite regress of measuring devices. Somewhere, the chain must end. Von Neumann concluded that the chain ends with conscious observation. That consciousness is what fundamentally collapses the quantum wave function. Most physicists find this conclusion too strange to accept, but no one has provided a better explanation that doesn't violate experimental results. So we have 3 experimental facts that won't go away. Observation changes quantum behavior. Future measurements determine past states. Conscious intention measurably affects quantum systems. And everything in reality, including you, is made of quantum particles. Which means the question isn't whether consciousness collapses reality. The question is how widely this extends from quantum scales to lived experience. and what it means about the nature of thoughts themselves. Quick note: if this is the first time you're encountering this depth, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future videos. And if you're noticing you understand this intellectually, but want help applying it in practice, I created something specific for that gap. It's called the manifestation path, link in the description. I'll leave it there for you later. Now back to what this means for consciousness itself. What quantum mechanics discovered through experiment, certain philosophical traditions understood through direct investigation centuries earlier, not through mysticism, through precise observation of how experience actually works. Vedanta philosophy in ancient India described reality as a unified field of consciousness that appears to fragment into observer and observed. But the fragmentation is appearance only. What seems like an independent external world is consciousness observing itself, creating the appearance of subject and object through the act of observation. This isn't poetry. This is claimed as direct experiential recognition. The physicist Erwin Schrödinger, who formulated the wave equation that governs quantum behavior, studied Vedanta deeply. He wrote, "Consciousness is a singular of which the plural is unknown. There is only one consciousness, and what seems to be a plurality is merely a series of different aspects of this one thing." He saw that quantum mechanics was pointing to the same conclusion as Vedanta, that the observer and the observed aren't separate. That consciousness doesn't witness reality from outside. It participates in reality's existence from within. Western philosophy encountered this through phenomenology, particularly in the work of Maurice Merleau-Ponty. He investigated perception not as passive reception, but as active constitution. When you see a color, you're not receiving data about an independent color that exists regardless of seeing. The color as experienced is inseparable from the act of experiencing it. Remove the experiencing, and you don't have an unexperienced color still sitting there. You have something that isn't color at all. Color is the event of consciousness meeting light frequencies, collapsing possibility into specific experienced actuality. He extended this to all perception. The world you experience isn't an independent realm you're simply witnessing. It's constituted through your perceiving of it. Not that you invent it arbitrarily, but that the world as experienced is the result of consciousness and possibility collapsing into actuality together. Subject and object co-arise. This is what quantum mechanics demonstrates at the particle level. Observation and observed co-create each other. Now let's make this experiential instead of theoretical. Notice the sensation you call your body right now. Don't analyze it. Just notice where you feel it. Is there a sensation of your left foot? What about your right hand? Your face? Here's what's strange. Before I mentioned your left foot, was there a conscious sensation of it? Or did the sensation appear when attention moved there? It's not that your foot didn't exist before. It's that the conscious experience of your foot, the felt sensation of it, appears when consciousness observes it. Without observation, the sensation exists as possibility, not as experienced actuality. Try this more precisely. Close your eyes for a moment. Notice the feeling of your tongue in your mouth. Notice its exact position, its texture, its temperature. Now notice that before I directed your attention there, you had no conscious experience of your tongue. The physical tongue existed, but the experienced tongue, the sensation of it in consciousness, collapsed into actuality only when you observed it. You're doing the quantum observation collapse experiment in real time with your own awareness. This isn't just true for bodily sensations. Listen to the sounds around you right now. Not to any specific sound. Just notice that there is hearing happening. Notice that the moment you become conscious of a sound, it emerges from an undifferentiated background into distinct experienced presence. Before consciousness observed it, the sound existed as possibility in the field of vibration. The act of conscious listening collapses that possibility into experienced sound. You're not witnessing sounds that were fully present already. You're collapsing acoustic possibility into conscious actuality through the act of listening. Now observe thought itself. Notice that a thought appears in consciousness, exists as content for a moment, then dissolves back into nothing. Where was that thought before it appeared? Where does it go when it dissolves? It's not stored somewhere then retrieved. It emerges from possibility into actuality through consciousness, exists as long as consciousness holds it, then collapses back into possibility. Thoughts are quantum events in consciousness. They don't exist as things waiting to be observed. They come into being through observation. The philosopher David Chalmers calls this the hard problem of consciousness. You can explain neural correlates. You can map brain activity, but you can't explain why there is experience at all. Why there's something it feels like to be conscious. Why isn't everything just mechanical processing in the dark? Why is there felt sensation, experienced color, heard sound? The answer quantum mechanics suggests is that consciousness isn't produced by matter. Matter as experienced is produced by consciousness collapsing possibility into actuality. Brain activity correlates with conscious experience, not because brain creates consciousness, but because consciousness collapsing quantum possibility into actuality creates the experience of both brain and world simultaneously. This means the thoughts you experience right now aren't epiphenomena, passive byproducts of neural machinery. They're collapse events. Each thought is consciousness selecting one possibility from infinite possibilities and bringing it into experiential actuality. And if thoughts collapse internal reality and observation collapses external reality, then the boundary between internal and external isn't as clear as it seems. Both are consciousness collapsing possibility into actuality. One inward, one outward, but same fundamental process. And now we arrive at the genuinely disturbing implication. If consciousness collapses possibility into actuality through observation, and if thoughts are a form of observation directed inward or outward, then habitual thoughts are habitual collapse patterns. You're not just thinking about your reality, you're collapsing specific possibilities into actuality through repetitive observation. The person who habitually observes themselves as inadequate is actively collapsing that possibility into experienced reality. The person who habitually observes themselves as capable is collapsing different possibilities into actuality, not as magical thinking, as quantum observation, directing what becomes actual instead of remaining possible. Let's pull this together. We've seen that observation changes quantum behavior, that the choice of measurement determines the measured past, that conscious intention measurably affects quantum probability. That philosophical investigation of experience reveals the same participatory reality quantum physics discovered, and that you can directly observe consciousness collapsing possibility into actuality in your own immediate experience right now. Here's what this means. You're not in a pre-existing reality that consciousness passively witnesses. You're in a participatory reality that consciousness actively collapses from possibility into actuality, moment by moment, through observation. The world you experience isn't independent of your experiencing it. Your thoughts aren't commentary on reality. They're selection mechanisms that determine which possibilities collapse into actuality and which remain latent. This is why sustained attention on anything makes it more real in your experience. Why repeated thoughts strengthen neural pathways. Why focusing on problems makes them proliferate. Why directing attention toward possibility makes new actuality emerge. You're not just noticing reality, you're participating in which version of reality becomes actual through the specific pattern of your observation. But here's the deeper recognition. If consciousness collapses reality, then what you think you are, the person you experience as yourself, is also a collapse pattern. The self isn't a fixed thing consciousness inhabits. It's a possibility field consciousness repeatedly collapses into the same habitual pattern through repetitive self-observation. You observe yourself as angry, and that possibility becomes actual. You observe yourself as calm, and different actuality emerges, not as pretending, as literally collapsing different quantum possibilities into experienced reality through conscious observation. This is why identity feels so solid, yet can change so radically. Why you can be one person in one context and completely different in another. Why crisis can shatter identity and rebuild it entirely. Because identity isn't a thing. It's a collapse pattern. Consciousness habitually observing itself in specific ways, collapsing the same possibilities repeatedly until that pattern feels like a fixed self. But it never was fixed. It was always consciousness collapsing possibility into temporary actuality. And this reveals the mechanism behind every form of transformation. You don't change by acquiring new information. You change by shifting which possibilities consciousness observes into actuality. Sustained attention on new possibility collapses it into actual experience. Withdrawal of attention from old patterns allows them to return to latent possibility. What you call growth or healing or transformation is consciousness learning to direct its collapse power differently. This is what Wheeler meant by participatory universe. You're not witnessing an independent reality. You're collapsing it into being through observation. Every thought is a vote for which version of reality becomes actual. Habitual thoughts are habitual collapse patterns. New thoughts are new collapse possibilities. And consciousness itself is the field from which all possibility emerges and into which all actuality returns. So the question isn't whether your thoughts collapse reality. Quantum mechanics confirms they do. The question is whether you're collapsing consciously or unconsciously. Most people spend their entire lives observing the same patterns repeatedly, collapsing the same possibilities into actuality, wondering why nothing changes, not because reality is fixed, but because their observation pattern is fixed. They're collapsing yesterday into today through the habit of observing yesterday's patterns. But if observation collapses possibility into actuality, then you have access to the fundamental mechanism of reality itself. You can choose what to observe. You can direct attention toward new possibility instead of old actuality. You can interrupt habitual collapse patterns and collapse something new into experience. Not someday, right now. Because right now, consciousness is collapsing possibility into actuality. The only question is whether you're doing it on autopilot or with awareness. And that difference is everything. After watching a video like this, the question is always the same. Okay, I understand. But now what? What do I do with this? Because understanding that observation collapses reality is one thing. Living as a conscious observer is something completely different. Between theory and real life, there's an abyss, and most people fall into it. They return to autopilot within 48 hours. The manifestation path is the bridge over that abyss. It's a 28-day system that takes understanding and transforms it into bodily, mental, and emotional practice. You won't just know you create reality. You'll become someone who consciously creates reality. Workbook 1 dismantles the old program. Workbook 2 defines the new program with precision. Workbook 3 embodies it through 28 days of daily action. Link in the description. It's for those who want to embody, not just understand. Here are 2 practices you can start immediately. First, spend 5 minutes today observing your thoughts without engaging them. Don't analyze, just notice. Watch thoughts appear, exist, dissolve. Recognize them as collapse events in consciousness, not as truth about reality. Second, choose one habitual thought pattern you want to interrupt. Each time you notice it arising, consciously redirect observation toward a different possibility. Don't force anything, just observe differently. Do this consistently for 3 days and notice what changes in your experienced reality. What you've seen today isn't just interesting theory. It's the fundamental architecture of experience itself. You're not a passive witness in an independent reality. Your consciousness collapsing possibility into actuality through observation, moment by moment, whether you realize it or not. The quantum physicists who discovered this called it the measurement problem, because they couldn't explain how consciousness collapses quantum states without invoking consciousness itself. But maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's recognition. That consciousness isn't in reality. Reality is in consciousness. And you're the consciousness doing the collapsing. Every thought, every observation, every moment. The question was never whether you collapse reality. You do. The question is what you're going to collapse next. If this genuinely shifted how you understand consciousness and reality, leave a like so more people find this, and drop a comment answering this. What's one habitual thought pattern you want to stop collapsing into actuality? Let's see what we're all working with.